Hello. Hello all. JR here again. This time to discuss recent changes to my own everyday carry items. Or rather, the first major overhaul of my system in almost 40 years. These are things I typically keep on my person on a daily basis. This is a pretty small and limited kit. I have a backpack I grab for unexpected trips out of town and overnight stays that's equipped with a more comprehensive complement of gear and supplies. And at home I possess an array of equipment and other resources. In my adventure days, partially documented in my book series, The Shadowfast Supercar Driver Logs, I also maintained what I call a Scramble vest in case of a crash or I was otherwise forced to leave the protection of my car while under duress. I used a carefully packed Vietnam-era Air Force survival vest for a while, but eventually switched to a more conventional hunter's vest for practicality reasons. Mainly, I preferred having the two big, roomy pockets of the hunting vest over the many small pockets of the military one, because I had a tough time remembering what each pocket in the military version contained, and that made for some awkward moments in a pinch. I retired both vests not long after quitting the supercar business, though. But back to the topic at hand. Although some of the everyday carry things would definitely qualify as survivalist type items, that quality is only a fraction of the kit's purpose. For having been a survivalist since the 1980s, I've come to the conclusion that if a sufficiently hard reset on all of civilization did come to pass, I wouldn't want to survive it anyway. Because the world might well be that bleak and awful afterwards. Yeah. I mean, making your own bread, soap, and toilet paper from scratch is lots more trouble than people think. Never mind all the toil and risks involved in growing or hunting, killing, and butchering your own food and the like, or shooting other people to protect your own pitiful stash. There's good reasons why average life expectancy was much lower a couple centuries ago than it is today. If you don't believe me about that, please feel free to do your own research into worst-case scenarios along those lines. For almost none of the post-apocalypse films you've ever seen even come close to portraying the awfulness of the real thing. Personally, I feel like life is already far too constrained, harsh, and limited. I certainly wouldn't want to live the rest of my now elderly life without safe drinking water, reliable electricity, heat, light, and internet access, among other things. So I believe in doing all I can to prevent Armageddon, rather than trying to prepare for life in its aftermath. Things like voting, for instance. For I myself have no interest in living in severe and constant fear and deprivation for the remainder of my days. Therefore, my everyday carry kit tends to serve more immediate and routine challenges than Armageddon, like impromptu repairs and replacements of the office, household, or automotive kind, or self-defense and unanticipated conflicts with man, beast, or nature, aids to recovery from injuries or accidents, self-rescue from various predicaments ranging from the mundane and embarrassing to the dire, as well as plain old convenience and personal safety and time saving. I also don't want my kit to make me stand out looks-wise or feel overburdened in terms of weight or bulk, and to be somewhat stealthy so that any would-be enemy might be surprised to learn of its presence and effects. Another concern is cost. I'm a big believer in not spending any more than you have to for things, partly because so much of what's available out there is junk, pure and simple, or is too easily lost or stolen or broken, all things considered. And so I prefer the most functional, reliable, and low-cost items I can find to suit any given purpose, and especially treasure those things which can be applied to as wide a variety of circumstances and challenges as possible, because that's basically what I typically find myself up against, even in my doddering old age. To those ends, I have recently reorganized and refreshed my own kit to be comprised of the following. I have hopefully included links on the page below to various items on Amazon I deem to be either identical in nature or else as near to the same functionality as I could find. First off is my eyeglasses. I had eye surgery some years ago, which catapulted me from a lifetime of comically bad nearsightedness to a much more normal range of vision. However, at the same time, I lost the ability to clearly see things nearer than my outstretched hand. So these days I keep some cheap reading glasses perched on my nose for that. I only need them for reading of fine print, such as those in novels or instructions, or when fiddling with small objects up close. But then again, such functions can be vital to daily life. I don't carry a backup pair on my person, but do keep an alternative tool in my everyday carry, which I'll describe later. Secondly is my belt. Yes, the one I keep my pants up with. It's a money belt. I actually own two of these. The one I'm speaking of here looks like a regular street clothes belt, unless you take it off and examine its interior surface, where you'll find a zipper running through much of its length. There's not much storage space inside the zipper between the two layers of leather, but there's enough to keep maybe $1,000 or more in large bills there, folded up into long, narrow strips. I like to keep a few hundred in there as backup to what's carried in my wallet when I can. If I'm robbed, the thief will likely take only my wallet and possibly my pocket contents, but not my belt, so I won't be left penniless. The other money belt I own is a traveler's model, meant to be worn inside the pants, basically just over your underwear. That one will hold lots more stuff than my street belt does, but it's only for lengthy, long trips on my part, to places far away, possibly requiring air travel. Next up is my smartphone. Smartphones can be loaded up with all sorts of nifty apps and reference ebooks to help you out in a pinch, even if you ignore the possibility of calling for help or looking things up on the internet. My own includes things like a compass and an app for using the camera light as a flashlight, among other things. They can also hold ebooks for pleasure reading or study, for all those times you have to spend in waiting areas of various sorts. Of course, your smartphone is only as good as your wireless signal and latest battery charge for the bulk of its functionality, and so easily becomes quickly worthless in any setting outside of civilization's norms, like the apocalypse, war, or smaller disasters. Lots of folks don't seem to realize that until it actually happens to them. You can improve on that a little by carrying things like extra batteries or power packs, solar or automotive chargers, or hand crank chargers, etc. But lots of those are too heavy and bulky to use for everyday carry without the help of a substantial bag or backpack. So if I did that, I might instead arrange to carry such items in the form of balanced ankle weights, usually hidden by my pants legs. That way they'd not be as noticeable to others, or take up precious space in my pockets, or require extra bags or jackets to carry. Plus, they'd help give me a bit more of a physical workout when I walked or climbed steps wearing them, and so improve my health and fitness. And wherever their added burden became unwise due to strenuous conditions, I could always discard them like ballast from a hot air balloon, or like the ankle and wrist weights Goku in the anime Dragon Ball Z drops when the fighting gets serious. And in a crisis, you could even use them as handy disposable projectiles to throw at something or someone in defense, or as a distraction, or in more secure moments as weights to hold something down, like the corner of a tarp, for instance. I'm not wearing such ankle-based gear at present myself, but that's what I'd try to do if so inclined. Another item is a cheap, black, durable digital watch. Mine is a black Casio men's classic sport watch, sufficiently water resistant for my circumstances to be basically waterproof, since I don't scuba dive. At a glance, it tells you the time, date, and day of the week. You can press a button to light up in the dark to read it. It also offers alarms and timers. I tried getting by for years without a watch, but for some tasks you need basic time and date info so frequently it becomes a hassle fishing out your smartphone for it all the time. Plus, the watch will run for years on its battery, while you must put aside your smartphone regularly on a daily or near daily basis to recharge, and so can't usually carry it then. Or usefully carry it then, rather. Possessing the watch also makes it less likely that I'll lose my smartphone by setting it down somewhere and forgetting it, or drop it and break it, since I don't have to access it, handle it so often anymore. Another benefit of less frequent access is that the phone's battery won't drain down quite as fast. My only complaint with my watch is it has a plastic display face, apparently, that's easily scratched by my daily routine, even as sedate as it now is compared to my adventure days. So for my next one, I'll be looking for a tougher face material. I also carry a wallet made of black ripstop nylon, such as you might find in tents or parachutes. The material is thin but tough and seems to stretch to fit whatever you stick inside. I searched Amazon and then the net in general for its like today to only come up near empty. Now, most stuff is all leather, or else the much thicker, bulkier, and less elastic ballistic nylon. It seems my type of wallet was so good that it ran itself out of business, for buyers never needed to get a second one. Because mine is maybe more than 30 years old and still going strong, if a little faded and ragged around the edges, it appears it will outlast me. I may have used it at least part of the time while I was still undertaking the adventures described in my shadow-fast supercar driver logs books. I just can't recall for sure, since it just does its job so well that it simply fades into the background and becomes near invisible to my notice, and so my recollections as well. I mainly use my wallet for normal identification, credit, debit, and discount cards, and cash and receipts. I do not carry one of those metal survival card things in it, basically because I consider those to be near useless and a waste of money. For I've tried their ilk before, along with so-called universal tools of various other sorts, and they all, every one, only proved to me how much more valuable a conventional, specialized tool would be in its place. Carrying survival tools of such limited functionality can also give you undue confidence in your ability to handle crises of various sorts, thereby possibly getting you to take on risks that you'll afterward find yourself not prepared for at all, leading to either you or others getting unnecessarily injured or worse. Of course, in the hands of a trained expert who refreshes his skills and memories regarding such things on a regular basis, even the most minimal or improvised of tools can sometimes be made to work. But most people are not trained experts, and even if they were, most wouldn't retain much of it long enough to last until they actually need it. For memory and skills fade over time if not used, and so pretty much everyone will be lots better off with more capable implements to start with. Your wallet, of course, is mainly necessary to identify you to agents of authority or to facilitate transactions, and so perhaps is the least interesting of your everyday carry items. But it's still a handy spot to keep hard copy backups of things like your contacts list on your phone, for those inevitable moments that your phone fails you or is lost for some reason. A good list of numbers to keep there are of friends, family members, your doctor's office, your workplace, etc. Basically, the most vital of those likely contained in your phone's contacts list. I also maintain a AAA, American Automobile Association, membership card in my wallet, the Plus tier, for a handy direct line to automotive help when something happens to my car. If you own a car and need to drive places on a regular basis, and especially if your car is an older one, sooner or later you're going to need roadside assistance like this. My membership tier basically allows for a free tow up to 100 miles from my vehicle. Living in a rural area where I might at times have breakdowns 25 or 50 miles from home, I could have used that twice in recent years if I'd had such a membership. Instead, I had one of those measly tacked-on roadside assistance services from my AT&T cell phone service, which resulted in me having to fork over more than $100 in cash both times. I've heard great things about Geico's roadside assistance too, but you have to have your car insured by them first to get it. Back in the 1970s, I knew my supercar inside and out since I'd built it. I kept a comprehensive toolbox in the trunk, along with a decent set of spare parts for the things most likely to go wrong. So although cell phones weren't around back then for people of my financial means, I was very self-sufficient in terms of breakdowns. Nowadays, though, cars are much more complicated and filled with black box components, so that even trained engineers or mechanics who routinely design or repair such things at their workplace can easily be left helpless on the side of the road themselves when they quit. So some sort of help number for car trouble is essential for everyone if they can afford it. Fortunately, the more modern in design your car is, the more generally reliable it is compared to the average 1970s car. Plus, being a very new car, like less than 2 years old, usually helps too. But no vehicle is completely immune from problems. I carry my smartphone and wallet in my left front pocket, mainly because it got to hurt sitting on the wallet years ago. Plus, pickpockets will find it more challenging to rob me this way. And it's also a little easier to retrieve your wallet from a front pocket than a rear while seatbelted in a car. In my right front pocket, I carry the following items. My folding knife. It's a black, locking, stainless steel Kershaw Clash with some serrated edge to it, a reversible pocket clip, and a glass-filled nylon handle, to be used for simply slicing open packages or self-defense, survival, or rescue. I like this model for the nylon handle, which should make it tougher for me to lose or drop it, even under adverse circumstances, and the way the tip is shaped, for it makes the blade stronger and less likely for the tip to break off. If you use it frequently enough, you can instantly open it one-handed in a fashion similar to a switchblade from decades past. I like the combination of two different sorts of edges on the blade, making it more versatile. I also like its blacked out look, which makes it a little tougher for an opponent to see coming, much like my flat black supercar used to be at night. The belt clip makes it easy to access at a moment's notice. As talked about later, for most of my life I carried a big fat Victorinox Swiss Army knife as my blade and the majority of my everyday carry toolbox. But like the cliche, it was a jack of all trades and master of none. It could do lots of different things in a pinch, but none of them especially well, especially the blade part. I unknowingly made my life much harder all those years, trying to get by with the Victorinox as my primary knife, when I should have been carrying a blade like the Kershaw instead. Something similar to what my dad carried for decades. Just the fact that the blade locks into place all by itself puts it head and shoulders above the Victorinox, safety and usefulness wise. But its dedicated nature also makes it handier to use for knifely purposes in general than the Swiss version. And if you're like me, you'll only use maybe 3 or 4 of your everyday carry items some 85% of the time, rather than any of the rest. And your knife will be one of those 3 or 4. So any failing in it will have a big impact on you regularly. That same right front pocket also houses a Practical brand tactical pen, basically for self-defense and survival purposes. The pen is a Kubotan, an automotive glass breaker, which strongly resembles an innocuous writing implement, and in fact does include ink pen functionality as well. But using the ink pen requires unscrewing the end cap for a few seconds. Plus, as using its clip holds the pen upside down in your pocket during carrying, it might not write immediately when you wish it, as the ink will need a minute to get to where it's supposed to be. Thus, you'll quickly relegate that sort of usage to rare occasions. That's fine with me, and exactly how I wanted to use the device when I ordered it, especially since it'll be significantly more costly and troublesome to get refills for the thing than it would be to simply buy some new cheapo pens at the local discount store and carry one of them beside the tactical in the same pocket, only turned downwards so as to keep it ready to write. The pen look and functionality for me in the tactical is mainly there to help prevent authorities from seizing it from me or deciding it's a single-purpose device and so wholly a weapon. Note that anyone wishing to improve ready access to ink flow in the tactical pen could always refill it with the innards of a space pen instead, as the bundled instructions say can be done. If you're not familiar with space pens, they're designed not to be affected by things like upside-down carry. This model tactical pen also looks a lot more like an ink pen than many of its competitors out there, which all look more like custom machined single-shot pistols or lightsaber handles than pens. Guys, I know we all love the pocket machine gun or lightsaber look, but that's exactly the opposite of what you want a tactical pen to look like. Why? Because you don't want it to stand out that much and attract the attention of security personnel or abductors who are specifically looking for such things. For if they notice it, bam, they've taken it away from you. Or else you innocently find yourself being questioned by law enforcement about something and searched, and they find your obvious killer pen and at the very least take it away from you and at the worst charge you for carrying it. Or maybe you're overpowered by a group of attackers, but might yet manage to retrieve your pen for use in surprising them for a getaway. If only they don't notice its assault potential before you get that chance and take it from you. So guys, please don't buy a tactical pen that shouts to the world that it's a weapon. All that will do is possibly ensure that it gets taken away from you at some point, or get you charged for merely owning it. Please resist the notion of buying a tactical pen mainly for reasons of showing it off to your buddies for its menacing look. For such pens are much less likely to be there when you need them than one which appears more ho-hum instead. For those of you unfamiliar with a kubotan, basically that refers to a cylindrical weapon you can grip in your fist, which protrudes a little out of both sides of your fist, with a point on one or both of those ends. The points serve to focus the force of any blow you deliver with the kubotan onto a very small spot, thereby effectively ratcheting up a lot the damage you can do, either to a car window after you've driven into a lake and need to escape, or to a bad guy trying to mug you. And while we're on the subject of self-defense weapons, I don't want to carry a gun, concealed carry or not. I did that years ago during my supercar days due to my high-risk adventures and circumstances, but I rarely have reason to get into such predicaments today, so rarely that it'd frankly be ridiculous for me to carry. I often just shake my head at the videos online showing so many American men routinely carrying pistols on them these days, for I'm sure that most of them likely have far fewer reasons to carry one than even I do nowadays. If you're not a great one for self-control, someone could easily anger you over something, maybe something laughably minuscule, and you might shoot at them before you even realize you're doing it. Add in the circumstances of a fellow having an unusually bad day and gross misunderstandings, and that possible lack of self-control widens to include even more guys. I just hope a minimum amount of innocent people are killed or mangled by all that before everyone comes to their senses and lots fewer guns are on the streets and in the hands of scarily untrained or unstable folks. Or else some much better self-defense item comes along that merely temporarily incapacitates someone, doing no permanent injury, and replaces guns entirely for everything but outright war. Yes, I know that stun guns and pepper sprays are available today, and definitely make some potential crises work out better than firearms would in their place. But as for me personally, I still prefer other measures, like being an easygoing guy who avoids conflict wherever possible and often goes out of his way to be helpful and polite to others. And if someone else is actively trying to goad me for no good reason, I'll do my best to simply walk away. But if he won't let me walk away, or someone innocent may get hurt if I do, then I'll try talking him out of whatever he intends to do. If that doesn't work, I'll try to get him to chase me or take me on so that others might escape while he's so occupied. And then I'll try to surprise him with how easily I put him down and hold him there until the situation is wrapped up to my satisfaction. And yes, I've successfully managed to do that in the past when unarmed against armed assailants. So that's not just a theoretical exercise for me. My everyday carry includes 3 different forms of convenient self-defense weaponry, 2 of which could be lethal in cases of very bad luck on someone's part, or if I'm pressed into a situation of having no other choice in the matter. But if possible, I start out with the least lethal option in those measures and only go up from there as required. I haven't yet described everything in my kit, but the 3 obvious weapons are the knife, tactical pen, and a flailing device. To my mind, the flailing device is the least dangerous. The tactical pen the next so, unless its wielder specifically targets weak points in the skull or throat with it, and knife the most dangerous. Note that you should educate yourself about basic kubotan or knife fighting techniques if you carry such things with this intent, partly so that you can successfully defend yourself with them, but also so that you'll know the difference between lethal and non-lethal strike points so that you won't hurt someone worse than you must. Of course, if you get into any dangerous situation at all, it can easily and rapidly escalate into one where you basically must go all out or die, like if you're facing multiple opponents, or one really big and nasty one. I've been there myself and wish you luck with those. Hopefully you can hurt or scare them badly enough to allow your escape without killing or crippling them. I'm also afraid that stun guns and pepper sprays aren't yet as safe and reliable as they should be. Things that you rarely use that run on batteries tend to end up dead when you finally need them most. And when they do work, sometimes stun guns still kill their targets. Plus, I'd worry about accidentally stunning myself if I carried one regularly, or about getting it taken away from me by an enemy and having it used against me. For after all, you pretty much have to be grappling up close with someone to use many of those things. Pepper sprays are better in some ways, such as definitely being less lethal, unless a blinded target walks out in front of a speeding bus or off a pier. And they give you more standoff distance from a foe, by a few feet anyway, at least if they work. Unfortunately, there are duds out there, and there's also the chance of accidentally using it on yourself, much like with the stun guns. The last straw for me on pepper sprays, though, are they seem to have expiration dates on them, according to what I've read, so you have to replace them regularly. That would be easy to neglect to do after you've carried one for many months without ever needing to use it. Then, when the time comes, it's expired and turned into a dud. Ouch! While stun guns and pepper sprays may indeed be the best option for some, such as women, I personally prefer the other measures I describe here. Plus, I have experience using them already. Between my folding knife and tactical pen in my right front pocket, I keep a nylon mesh pouch containing various items helpful for general purposes as well as survival situations. I can quickly pull the entire pouch out to access its contents. The pouch is one of a set of 4 different sized and colored Vaults mesh storage bags I purchased some time back. The pouch sports a neat diagonal zipper across one side rather than along an outside edge that reduces the need to dig around inside it for things. The pouch is also brightly colored, so there's much less chance of setting it down somewhere and then visibly losing track of it. That happened to me once with an old axe in the woods. It blended in so perfectly with the fallen leaves and tree trunks that I and my companions were never able to find it again. The contents of the pouch at present include one mini Bic lighter for fire starting and miscellaneous other useful chores. For instance, sometimes you need a flame to melt together the frayed ends of synthetic cording, or you need to sanitize a cutting edge. In my supercar days, I kept a flare gun and flare pens handy for various contingencies too, and was often glad I had them. Of course, fire can easily get out of control and wreak surprisingly massive devastation, and so can often require still more serious and sober handling than a firearm. That's one reason that lit candles ordinarily should be kept out of the hands of both children and childlike adults. Unnecessary or unsafe candle use burns down homes on a fairly regular basis. Also carry in that bag one 3-foot long metal tape measure, only a little bigger and thicker than a dollar coin, for everyday measuring tasks. Like my ripstop wallet, I can't recall when or where I acquired the tape measure, and there's no branding apparent on it after all these years. But I suspect I got both it and the mini adjustable wrench I mentioned later at a flea market in Texas in the 1970s, when I was living the events recounted in my supercar book about the period. I frequently find myself needing to measure something, or else get an accurate idea of how big something might be that I'm examining specs for. In a separate small transparent plastic Ziploc bag inside the nylon mesh pouch, I have a small generic notepad and a minimal first aid kit. The plastic bag keeps the contents from getting wet and can itself be used to hold and carry a small amount of water in a survival situation. In a different plastic bag, I keep a credit card sized Fresnel lens magnifier and a plastic camping mirror. I use the bag for these primarily to prevent these items from becoming more disorganized inside the larger nylon mesh pouch and possibly getting damaged, like the mirror or lens getting scuffed or scratched. I was able to scrounge up these two well-fitting plastic bags from stuff already at my house, but if I needed to procure such things another way, I'd probably order a set of varied size bags from Amazon that I ran across, where you get 600, ranging in 6 different sizes from 1.5 by 2 inches up to 3 by 5 inches. 600 assorted bags is basically a lifetime supply for most of us, so long as we store the bulk of them in a cool, dry place that never gets struck by sunlight. Since you'll probably never use most of them yourself, I suggest giving some of them away to friends or family to help them carry their own versions of some of the things in this everyday carry collection. And note that many of the gadgets I list here are not only small and highly useful, but cheap as well, and so make for excellent gifts or stocking or grab bag stuffers or swag for various occasions. And in some cases, such gifts might literally save someone's life down the road. The magnifier, under some circumstances, could help make fire, but usually will help most with reading fine print or examining small items like splinters. You might notice that the magnifier will also serve as a replacement for my reading glasses, should I lose or break them. The mirror can be used as a signaling device, or for normal self-checks grooming-wise, or in examinations of otherwise hard-to-see injuries or damages. But I also often use such mirrors in concert with a flashlight to see behind or inside things that I otherwise could not, or which would require lots more hassle to do without the mirror technique. For instance, you might have a big flat-screen TV on a fireplace mantel, and you want to inspect its connection ports on the back without having to disconnect and move the entire giant TV off the mantel and down to a table. Or wish to peer behind some ductwork inside a gas furnace while troubleshooting it to avoid any unnecessary disassembly to obtain such a look. You just need to keep in mind that the view in the mirror will be reversed, but that rarely causes any problem for these sorts of purposes, other than making text read backwards. Such indirect viewing can also come in handy in combat or pursuit circumstances, as is sometimes seen in films of such events, by allowing you to see things outside your hiding place or cover while minimizing your own visible profile and exposure to others. The notepad empowers any on-the-fly documentation effort which may be necessary, as well as provides a source of tinder for fire making. It also allows me to leave notes behind for people when I have no other way to reach them. The micro first aid kit includes one antiseptic towelette, one antiseptic prep pad, and 3 adhesive bandages of varying sizes and shapes. Basically, I cannibalized these from the larger first aid kit carried in my backpack. I expect other items in the overall EDC kit to help expand the utility and convenience of my micro first aid kit. Another item in the nylon mesh pocket pouch is a considerably smaller, soft, open on one end, black nylon eyeglasses case, which accompanied a recent set of glasses I bought. Inside this is a single wooden ice cream stick, which can serve as fire tinder or for stirring or probing or scraping or other purposes. Bundled with the ice cream stick is a slightly over 5 inches long set of needle nose vice grip pliers with a wire cutter built in, and a slightly less than 4.5 inch long 100 millimeter adjustable wrench, the jaws of which open up to 5/8 of an inch. Many similar size wrenches I've seen of this sort won't open this wide, and so are much less useful than mine. The vice grip pliers and adjustable wrench have frequently been everyday carries for me since deep in my supercar days, decades ago, and proved themselves again and again in many scenarios involving various repairs, replacements, tweaks, and other matters. The pliers themselves are large and pointy enough to also be used as a Kubotan-like weapon, if need be. That completes the present contents of my nylon mesh pouch in my right front pocket. In my left rear pocket, I carry fingernail clippers. There's nothing special about them at all, but carrying them helped me to quit biting my nails long ago and guarantees I don't resume the habit, since a major trigger for that was a sort of itchy feeling about my nails when they got too long. And if you have no clippers, you might naturally use your teeth instead. This brings us to my keychain. There are, of course, keys on them. Not many, as I have pruned away from the collection all those which are obsolete or else not likely to be necessary over the course of an entire year or more. This item includes a black Bomber & Company paracord carabiner survival keychain lanyard, which includes 1.5 meters of braided paracord, a heavy-duty belt clip, and a tiny fire starter rod. The paracord, of course, can be unwound for cordage use, and the fire starter rod scraped with one of my blades to make fire starting sparks, so long as I have appropriate tinder already prepared. The rod is tiny and about the minimum size you might get by with for such a thing. I use a small light-duty carabiner to connect my keychain items to a belt loop on my pants, partly because the clip on the paracord lanyard is too small to do the job conveniently. I like to be able to detach and attach the keychain with regards to my belt loop instantly, one-handed. Though the Bomber & Company lanyard is serviceable, and I'll probably carry it for a while, I'm not wholly satisfied with it, and will likely replace it in my EDC at some point in the future. Mainly, the belt clip being too small to serve for that purpose is what puts me off it. I have an older model Swiss Plus Tech Utility on the ring, which I use fairly often. I frequently use it simply because I can bring it to bear on a problem faster and more conveniently than anything else in my own person store for light-duty scraping, prying, poking, and the like. And I prefer to use it over my folding knife where possible so as not to put too much undue wear on my main blade's edge or point. The utility key can be opened and closed to connect or disconnect from a key ring. In practice, it sometimes comes loose when you don't mean for it to, but somehow I've never lost it over the years. The utility key contains a small flat screwdriver tip and a small Phillips, about a 1-inch long straight blade, which even after years was able to slice a sheet of paper fairly well just now, and 1 inch of serrated saw blade. There's also a tiny file patch and micro eyeglass screwdriver tip. Newer models seem to have eschewed the file patch for a bottle opener. The utility key can be surprisingly useful at times. I use it much more often than my pen flashlight or small Swiss Army knife these days, and about a third as often as my folding knife. I have a black 125 lumen single AAA battery powered pen light on my keychain, a through night T01 mini LED flashlight. It's nothing fancy. You twist the head to switch it on and off like a keychain mag light I previously carried years ago. The mag light quit working on me after a number of hard years. The flashlight's light output is better than I recall my mag lights being, though back then with my mag light LED bulbs weren't available. However, the beam isn't going to reach over substantial distances. It does well for a pen light you can carry on you at all times, but it's not a suitable replacement for a full-size flashlight when that's called for. The pen light came with its own short chain and clip to attach it to my keychain, and I have retained that. The short chain with clip allows me to easily detach the flashlight from my main keychain if I want. I also have a military P51 model can opener, taped closed with a small piece of masking tape attached to my chain. For years, including during my supercar days, I carried one of the smaller P38 can openers on my keychain untaped. It was very handy, but the smaller size made it a little more strenuous to use than the larger model, especially if there were lots of cans to be opened. Its sharp, unfolding point part also began opening up on its own at times after a few years, causing it to snag on things or poke me. 2, I can go for years these days without needing to use such an opener, since I no longer venture outside of civilization so often. Hence, the taping closed of its jaws. On the other hand, when you need a can opener, you need it bad. For attempting to open a can any other way can not only be messy and wasteful of food spilled, but risky in terms of self-injury as well. All those things can turn out to be lethal in a survival situation. Due to the recent changes in my everyday carry kit described in this video, I'll no longer have a can opener on my resident Swiss Army knife. So that's another reason to carry a separate can opener and to carry the larger P51 rather than the smaller P38. Lastly, I have a tiny Victorinox Rambler Swiss Army knife which contains tweezers, a nylon toothpick, a key ring, scissors, small flat screwdriver, nail file, straight knife blade, magnetic Phillips screwdriver, bottle opener, and wire stripper. When closed, the knife is well under 2.5 inches long, even smaller than the pen light. I like the versatility of the small chain and clip which accompanied my pen light so much that I rooted around in the junk drawers here to find another clip and small 3/4 inch in diameter key ring by which to keep my Swiss Army knife connected to my main keychain too. That way it too, like my flashlight, can be easily detached whenever I want. The scissors and tweezers in the Victorinox can add to the functionality of my micro first aid kit, as can the credit card sized magnifying lens mentioned earlier. My flashlight can too, as can all the various blades I'm carrying. My smartphone can supplement my first aid kit as well if it's charged up and already previously had a suitable first aid reference manual downloaded to it. Other survival reference information can also be present when needed if you prepared for it beforehand. The way I have my keychain configured, I can easily wield it as a bludgeoning, flailing weapon on short notice. A crude slapjack or blackjack, only with sharp, cutting edges, using the combination of the Swiss Army knife and flashlight as a handle, as the entire thing is nearly 10 inches long, held that way. Until it's needed, however, it's less than 7 inches long, with much of its length hanging down hidden into my right rear pocket from a nearby belt loop. As the keychain only occupies a little of one upper side of the pocket, I also use that same space to temporarily stash purchase receipts and spare change when I collect them. In my supercar days, I almost always kept my keychain configured in this fashion, though the tool assortment was somewhat different. For decades, I carried a much larger, heavier, and more comprehensive Swiss Army knife than today's Rambler. Today's Victorinox Explorer model seems the nearest configuration to my old knife. It served me all right, I guess, but depending on such all-in-one multi-tools has its disadvantages. For instance, if you lose it or it's stolen, you've lost all those tools at once. If you break it, you may have lost either some or all of them too. Another disadvantage is if you need to use two of the tools in concert with one another at the same time. That will usually be impossible to do when they're all rigidly attached to the same hub. In contrast, I've successfully used my wrench and pliers together with one another many times. And often many of the individual tools in a single multi-tool are just too small, short, awkward, or limited in some other way to be as helpful as you'd like. One example of that is the tiny magnifying glass on my old Swiss Army knife. I like my credit card size magnifier much better, and it has a better shot at fire starting than the knife's too. It's much easier to read a wall of fine print or locate small labels with the larger magnifier than the knife's as well. The bigger Swiss Army knife could also be a literal pain in the butt. In my own case, I once took a most unfortunate tumble down a mountain for an excruciatingly long distance, much of it riding on my honking big Swiss Army knife in my back pocket. Basically, I wiped out while skiing. Ouch! Well, that's it for my everyday carry update. I hope you find it useful to your own EDC kit. My selections are based on decades of experience and loads of hair-raising adventures, some of which you can read about in my supercar books. Here's one final tip, though, about the two most important things you have with you every day, your mind and body. I've seen at least dozens of EDC videos on YouTube, and not a single one point out that your health and fitness is a vital part of your everyday capabilities. Practically any bit of man-made equipment you see shown on YouTube pales in comparison to your own body in importance for just about everything. So if you want to truly be prepared for almost anything, drop all the junk food and drink immediately. Start getting enough sleep by cutting down on your TV or gaming time, and begin working out regularly. The daily exercise of willpower necessary to do those things will make you mentally stronger as well. I try to get in all the walking and more rigorous exercise that I can these days with my busy schedule. For my fellow men, I'd recommend at least 60 push-ups and 30 deep squats a day. There's been times I was doing 200 push-ups and 90 deep squats daily. Don't fret if 60 push-ups sounds impossible because you currently poop out at around 6 or 7. You can get lots better. You can get lots better, lots faster than you think if you just do as many as you can every day and adjust the number up gradually over time as you get stronger. So do 6 for a few days. Then do 10 for the next few. After that, spend a week doing 12 a day, and so on. You'll be at 60 before you know it. Chin-ups are great too, but might require you to buy a device to do them on. I use a Perfect Fitness multi-gym from Amazon. Lately, I've only been doing 40 chin-ups on those days I get around to them. But at my best in the past, I was doing 90 every day. Don't get discouraged by the chin-ups either, even if you can't do a single one at first. Just do the best you can, and like with the push-ups, gradually build up to impressive numbers over time. One odd thing about chin-ups is that strength might not even be the problem in the beginning. Instead, you literally simply might not know how exactly to use your muscles to lift yourself that way, and only learn how by repeatedly failing quite a few times. Seriously, that's how it was for me personally. My arms seemed dumbfounded by what I was asking of them, and only figured out how to make their muscles work that way after I kept trying the maneuver over and over again. All those exercises are basically forms of weightlifting or resistance training, I think it's called. But for a complete routine, you should do that type of thing first, as quickly as you reasonably can, right after getting out of bed in the morning. Then do an aerobic or cardiovascular exercise afterwards. I use an elliptical machine for the cardiovascular, or, as they've sometimes been called, a cross-country skiing machine. It's low impact and so easy on your joints. I tend to spend at least 40 minutes on mine at a time. Though it's nowhere near as strenuous as the push-ups or chin-ups, it can still get you to a dripping sweat if you want. I have a Roku TV set up in front of my machine so that I can listen to free Pandora music or watch YouTube or Netflix while I work out, making it less of a chore. Some sort of routine along those lines will help keep your brain functioning at its best as well. Atop all this, studying up on the basic principles of survival and improvisation, and perhaps reading some accounts of real-world instances of such things, can make you better prepared for what may come, too. Thanks for watching. See you next time.